and talk about it and see what we think about it and stuff. I already watched all the videos and whatnot, so I have some thoughts. But basically the overhaul is it's Source 2, so it's like updated engine, the Source engine, but 2. Now it's twice as good. Basically it's just like, you know, better graphics, more realistic lighting, all that good stuff. Which personally I'm not a huge fan of. I don't really care about aesthetics in video games that much, but what they've done with CS2 is really cool, what I've seen. This is the website for it. There's a limited, like a closed beta test that's happening right now, but I'm pretty sure that you just have to get lucky and launch the game and you're in it, which I didn't, so I got fucked. The next era of Counter-Strike begins this summer, so really cool. They added like a launch date. So the closed beta is today, the 3rd or the 22nd of March. But apparently, like it's the full release is gonna come this summer, so we like know for sure now, which is crazy because like there was no official announcement of Source 2 being an actual thing until now, and they just give us a release date because Valve is sick. It's the largest technical leap forward in Counter-Strike's history, ensuring new features and updates for years to come. All of the game's new features will be revealed when it officially launches this summer, but the road to Counter-Strike 2 begins today as a limited test for CSGO players. During this test period, we'll be evaluating a subset of features to shake out any issues before the worldwide release. Counter-Strike 2 arrives this summer as a free upgrade to CSGO, so build your loadout, hone your skills, and prepare yourself for what's next. Read on to learn more. So basically, from what I understand, all your skins transfer over. The mechanics are like 99% the same. It's like Overwatch 1 to Overwatch 2 almost, except for like this is actually done well, and it's free. So they have like 3 little videos about the new features and stuff that we'll check out. So we'll go to the easiest ones to do first. So the skins, all the skins are in. All the skins you had before, all of them are transferred over. Same with models and stuff. That's really, really huge because if they didn't do that, then they would definitely split the community super fucking hard because there's a lot of financial investment in skins. So if they didn't allow you to transfer your skins over, then a lot of the community would stay on CSGO just because of the skins. Or like you just would be completely fucked and you just lose a ton of money. So it's really, this is a no-brainer. It's probably part of the reason it took a long time for Source 2 to come out is that they wanted to make sure that this would work. Because this is probably like really difficult to implement because there's like all new material-based shading and all that stuff. So like everything had to be rebuilt from the ground up. But that's cool. Watch this video first. It's pretty dope. I've seen it before.
Counter-Strike is known for its visceral and satisfying gunplay. Now, firing a weapon looks pretty simple. You click your mouse, your character shoots, your target takes damage.
Can I just say the animations look so good? Like the ragdolls and stuff. Like, this just looks like... I love how they kept the CSGO aesthetic, but it just like looks better. You know, the visibility doesn't seem to be an issue or anything. That's like usually the problem when people make things like higher fidelity is that you lose a lot of visual like readability, which is super important for a game like Counter-Strike, but it doesn't really seem like that's the case at all. It just seems like the animations are like chuggier and like feel better, and like the gunplay sounds really good. And
there's a lot more.
I mean, it looks like it feels like Counter-Strike still,
in
but
previous versions of Counter-Strike, the game
better.
only evaluated moving and shooting in discrete time intervals, or ticks, and time between those ticks didn't exist. For the most part, the experience was seamless, but sometimes those milliseconds between click and tick could be the difference between landing or missing your shot. That's why with Counter-Strike...
I love how nerdy Counter-Strike is. Like, this is some peak nerd shit, and I love it. So, like, tick rate system, basically, it's a lot like a frame rate system. You know, like, the game checks for updates every so many times a second. And in regular Counter-Strike, like matchmaking, it's 64 ticks a second, which is pretty low for a competitive FPS like this. So third-party matchmaking services have the 128 tick because it's a lot higher responsiveness. And I've heard that the reason why Valve never did 128 tick for official matchmaking services is because a lot of the player base couldn't get high enough frame rates to match 128. And so if you're not playing at like at least 128 FPS at a 128 tick server, things get really weird. And so to like not exclude people, they didn't make it go up to 128 tick. Also, it's expensive to run 128 tick servers. But basically the way it works is like every so many times a second, the game checks for inputs. So like the time in between these two ticks, if you like, you know, click exactly in the middle, it'll like skip to the next one, even though you're technically closer to this one. Right? So like things will happen on very, very small increments based on your inputs and the tick rate. And so like at a lower tick rate, like 64, the gap is bigger, so the inputs take longer. Which is why, you know, higher end servers play at higher tick rates. But they're doing something really cool with the tick rate system. In Source 2,
with Counter-Strike 2, we're introducing sub-tick updates.
Which is something I've never heard of before in my life. Sub-tick updates. I had no idea this is a thing.
Rate no longer matters for moving and
Mathematically, I had no fucking clue that this existed. This means that like, I don't know the logistics, but essentially you don't have to wait for it to be the tick for the action to happen. Which is crazy. Like there's gotta be some crazy mathematical thing happening where there's like a bunch of small sub ticks happening between full ticks. And that would allow them to keep like a lower tick rate server. So it works well on low FPS, like a 64 tick server, but it effectively plays like a 128 tick server is my guess is how it would feel. Which is super interesting. This is something that you wouldn't be able to test unless you actually play the game, and I didn't get into the beta, so I got fucked, I guess. But that's really, really cool because that solves the problem with the low end hardware not being able to support like high end tick rate servers, while also like not having input delay and stuff. It's very interesting.
Server will know the exact moment you fired your shot, jumped your jump,
and it's server side, not client side.
The server will calculate your precise actions between ticks. So what you see is what you get.
And that's just one of those things where it's like, you just gotta play it, and if it's implemented well, it'll feel amazing. And it's Valve, right? So it's gonna be implemented well. There's gonna be issues with ping for sure, though. Only works with really good internet. Yeah, potentially there could be some issues with that, because you're still gonna have ping issues, right? With like client-side visual. Can we just, like, okay. I'm not gonna talk about the smokes because they got a whole video on it. But like, man, it looks so good. Like this looks and feels exactly like CSGO, but just better. Like everything just seems more solid. And especially the smokes, I love the smokes. We'll talk about this when we get to the full video, but. Also the Zeus animation's hilarious. Also, Left 4 Dead 1 is the better game than Left 4 Dead 2 because you can see your feet. Exposed foot, you see that? You can see your feet in Source 2. That obviously Source 2 is better than Source 1 because you can see your feet. Feet pics in Source 2. But you see what you get. Tick rate no longer matters for moving, shooting, or throwing. Sub-tick updates are the heart of CS2. Previously, the servers only evaluated the world in discrete time intervals called ticks. Thanks to Counter-Strike 2 sub-tick update architecture, servers know the exact instant that the motion starts, the shot is fired, or a nade is thrown. As a result, regardless of tick rate, your moving and shooting will be equally responsive, and your grenades will always land the same way. That's cool. That means no RNG, because that was a problem before on low tick rate servers, right? Like, if you're running 128 tick, and you do like a jump throw bind, sometimes it like would end up landing differently than a 64 tick jump throw, which is really cool. You can see your own shadow too. Oh, that's interesting. That's cool. All right, so we'll talk about the smoke grenades next because the smoke grenades are fucking huge. This is crazy.
Information can mean the difference between success or failure. As a result, smoke grenades have become a cornerstone of team tactics. With Counter-Strike 2's new game engine, we've evolved smokes and made them dynamic. Smoke grenades now create volumetric 3D objects that live in the world.
That is so cool.
Smoke grenades now create
this is like, okay,
3D objects.
One of the only things that I think Valorant does better than Counter-Strike is their smokes. I mean, I think they look ugly in Val, but in CS, there's a bunch of fuckery with one-way smokes and like, you know, smokes fading faster if you're inside them and like having these weird rough edges that are really hard to see around. But it seems like they made the smokes like very round, like they have a solid shape and the edges of them are solid. So there's no like gray area. You can't like sit at the corner of a smoke and like be invisible. They also dissipate for everybody and are seen the same way from every angle, which is like so much better.
Smoke, regardless of position, but the smoke can
That's actually like just legitimately, I think, just better than the way the CS does now. I think one of the only things that CSGO does poorly is the smokes. And so like this doing that better is just so perfect.
with the environment in interesting ways. It reacts to lighting. Grows to fill spaces.
This is really cool as well. They have like a completely different utility now because they grow based on like the way that the room is shaped. So this smoke that would only cover like this area normally now covers the whole thing because it's in a narrow condensed area. It's like they basically just gave the smoke an actual hitbox and had it collide with the environment and have it maintain its same mass, you know, and the mass just shapes the environment. Well, this will be on PS5 now. Is it? No, it's not a console game.
The shape of the
but
smoke cloud can
so
be
cool.
and carved
This is something that's very contentious, though. I don't know how people are gonna like this.
and grenades.
I think it's fucking sick, but you can blow up smokes. Like when you shoot through a smoke in CS normally, nothing happens. You just shoot right through it. And if you don't have a silencer on, then you can see the bullet tracers through it, but the smoke stays intact. But now, if you shoot through a smoke, the smoke plumes and creates a hole in it. So like, if you before were shooting through a smoke, it's kind of a gamble because if you have anything besides an A1S, basically, people can track where you're shooting from through the smoke and shoot you back, but it's hard. Right? Like it's hard to shoot back tracers through a smoke. But in this, if you shoot through a smoke, you're instantly fully actually visible. Right? So if you shoot through a smoke, you better guarantee that you're hitting that shot because you are instantly going to get fucked, which changes the way that you play around smokes a lot. And it's really hard to say if that's a good change or a bad change until it's been play tested a ton. I think it's interesting, and I'm like, definitely, it's going to change the way you use smokes entirely. And I think it adds way more tactics to the smokes, especially because they go back. They grow back. So like,
even more
you shoot through it and it disappears, but then it comes back, right? What's the point of a smoke? Why pop it at all? Well, they're still useful. They still are going to like hide areas and stuff. The thing is like, it just actually makes them kind of more useful, if that makes sense. Like, it makes them more defensive. Because if you use a smoke and someone tries to shoot through it, then you know where they are immediately. Like, let's say you're crossing nuke outside on T side and you throw the smoke wall. If someone tries to wall bang you from like heaven or big or whatever, you instantly know where they are. Because in current CS, if that happens, you have no idea. There's like a million angles outside, right? Like they could be shooting from anywhere. Even if you can see their tracers, it's really hard to tell. But if you're using these smokes, you'll instantly be able to know based on the trajectory of like where the smoke pops, where the person's at. So it gives away way more information when you're shooting through them. So like if you're doing it on T side as a defensive mechanism, which is usually how smokes are used, then you actually get a lot more information out of the smokes rather than less. Now, there are some situations where like it definitely just has less utility. Like it's way harder to ninja defuse now because if you're on the bomb, someone shoots through the smoke, they instantly see you, right? Like you can't just like stick and hope they miss. You know, that's a big one. That changes a lot, actually. Also, defensive smokes on CT side aren't as useful if you're holding choke points because you could just like shoot through the smoke and then see the whole side. So you can't really play weird off angles behind smokes because you could always just shoot the smoke, you know, and then see them. Like you can't like stand in front of a smoke. Like a good example is people love to on Inferno. Yo, Salted, thanks for the 202 at 18 months, dude. I appreciate it. Like CT side Inferno, people like to stand in front of the smoke right by car and just sit there and wait for people to walk through. But you can't do that anymore because people are going to spam that smoke and you're just standing in the middle of Inferno B now, you know, with no cover. It's like stuff like that's not going to work. But whether that's a good thing or a bad thing, I don't know. I feel like you just need to play a lot to figure it out, right? I think it'll give more tactics, but you won't be able to do some of the same ones you did before. My biggest problem with it is ninjas. I feel like you should still be able to do ninjas, but I don't know how that's going to work. Like, obviously, you can't change it just for when you're diffusing or something. That'd be kind of a meme.
Tactical opportunity.
But I do feel like it adds a lot, like, even bigger skill ceiling to the game, honestly. I like it. I think it needs to be tested. Also, the frag grenades blowing them up makes frag grenades way more interesting. Like, using frag grenades to blow open a smoke, like, that might be something that you would do a lot, you know? Also, that fire effect is amazing. So that will change your perspective on what you want to do with your nade equips, assuming you can equip the same amount. Like, you might not want to have 2 flashes. It might be better to always have an HE instead, you know? All right, one last video.
With over 20 years
Yeah, counter
of
grenade
history,
play and stuff.
maps are a fundamental
Like, you
pillar
could
of
do
tech-
pop grenades instead of pop flashes, right? Like, you have a teammate throw a grenade for you, lands in the smoke, explodes, and then you are already holding the angle with an op or something. You know? Like, and that way you don't get flashed. You can look right where you're looking, and you have peeker's advantage, right? Because the dude who's holding the smoke is just holding an angle. You know, the smoke disappears, you're already peaked, you don't even have to move. You don't have movement inaccuracy or anything, you know? Like, it could be really interesting with stuff like that.
Counter-Strike. And in Counter-Strike 2, maps are getting a new look. But don't worry, you can still bring along your countless hours honing strategies and exploiting every corner and crevice. We took 3 approaches to improving maps while retaining their rich legacy. First, there are touchstone maps.
Like, they want to make new maps? Are people getting tired of the same old maps? Dude, we've been playing Dust 2 since like 1999.
Maps with solid
The answer is no.
that players can use to evaluate gameplay changes from CSGO to Counter-Strike 2. These have improvements to lighting and character read, but otherwise haven't been changed. Next, we have upgrades. These are maps that...
I mean, this is basically exactly what you would expect, right? Like, they redid the lighting on some of the maps and, you know, tried to improve readability while also increasing visual fidelity, which it seems like they've done, which is amazing.
Use new Source 2 lighting, including a physically based rendering system that produces realistic materials, lighting, and reflections.
I wonder if there will be any spots on the maps where you can use the realistic reflections to see around corners and stuff. That'd be really interesting. Because you can't do that in current CS.
And finally, overhauls.
There's no like real-time reflections.
The oldest maps have been fully rebuilt from the ground up, leveraging all of the Source 2 tools and rendering features. These tools will be available for community map makers to make it easy.
This is going to be
build,
amazing.
experiment, and
You're going to see
iterate.
some really cool map maker stuff.
With upgrades to lighting, player read, and materials in Counter-Strike 2, even the familiar will feel brand new.
I'm fucking stoked. It looks sick. I'm very excited. Also, the tracers on the bullets look so good. I'm pretty stoked. Basically, it just looks just better. And it's free. And it's going to be sick. It's going to be huge for CS. And I'm stoked. I love CS, so. High def VFX. From UI to gameplay, all visual effects have been reimagined. All the visual effects have been updated with Source 2 lighting and particle systems. Wow, look at that blood. Holy shit. All new look and behavior for water, explosions, fire, smoke, muzzle flashes, bullet tracers, impact effects, and more. I really like the impact effects and blood splatter. I wonder if they fixed Molotovs being like impossible to see through. Because, dude, sometimes they are legit impossible to see through. UI enhancements. Honestly, I don't know. That's going to be like super subjective. The UI stuff, like, we'll see. I don't know. Gotta see the full game. I'm very stoked though. It should be fun. All right, let's play RE4 now. Let's go get that no-hit run. Streamer, shut up. Play RE4. I know.